Good morning, students. Yeah, say your prayer. Yeah, thank you. நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர். நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் மருதுமுறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர். நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் மருதுமுறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர். நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் மருதுமுறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். Okay, students, take your social science book. Yeah, take page number 48. So today we will discuss about the fall of Berlin Wall and the end of Cold War era. That is the disintegration of Soviet Union. So the fall of Soviet Union. Yeah. So after World War II, so United States and USSR so became the two superpowers. Yeah. So the America, so they support capitalist countries, and USSR, Russia, so they support communist countries. Yeah, so they directly didn't involved in any war. Yeah, but they involved in socio-political influence in other countries. Okay, so in the year 1990s, so during 1990s, so the Soviet Union, yeah, so disintegrated into many states. So some of the countries so get liberated from the occupation of Soviet Union. Yeah. So how they became independent. Yeah. So how they left the Soviet Union aggression. Yeah. We will discuss in this class. Yeah. Before that, we will discuss about the fall of Berlin Wall. So Berlin, so the capital city of Germany. Yeah. So during World War II, so the East Germany was occupied by the Russian forces, while the West Germany was occupied by the American forces. Okay, so they divided Germany into two halves, and Berlin, the capital city, so in the center of the capital city, they constructed, so the Russia constructed a wall, so which was demolished later. Yeah, so how they constructed the wall, why they constructed the Berlin Wall, yeah, how and when it was demolished. So first we will discuss about that. Then the Cold War era, so end of Cold War era. So previous class we discussed about the Cold War, yeah, so between Russia and America. Yeah, so their Cold War influence on some countries like Cuba, Vietnam. Yeah, so what happened in those countries, especially, and also in North Korea. Yeah, so after 1970s, so there was decline in Soviet Union, so in the communist regime in Soviet Union. Yeah, so the country disintegrated, was partitioned into many countries. So some of the countries so which was under the Soviet Union aggression got liberated in late 1990s. Yeah, so how they get liberated? So what are the countries formed after the disintegration of Soviet Union? So that is USSR. Yeah, we will discuss in today's class. So recall what we have discussed in our previous class. So in our previous class we discussed about the Vietnam War. Yeah. So after Second World War, so Vietnam, so Vietnam was under the control of France. Yeah, so Indochina Peninsula, Vietnam was under the control of France. Yeah, but after Second World War, Vietnam was controlled by, so at the end of the Second World War, Viet Minh, a political party, controlled the northern half of Vietnam. Yeah. So after that, because of the Geneva Conference, so which decided Vietnam has to be divided into two, so North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Yeah. Then the remaining Indochina countries, Laos, Cambodia, so they were given independent, but their external affairs and defense was under the control of France. Yeah. But Vietnam was divided into North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Yeah. In North Vietnam, so communist government was established, while in South Vietnam, so capitalist government with the support of America was established. Yeah. But in South Vietnam, so what happened means, so the Liberal Federation movement, yeah, so they want to establish the communist government in their region also. Yeah. So for that they involved in guerrilla warfare. So in order to control them, so in order to defeat them, so the American forces enter into Vietnam. Yeah, so they bombed continuously both in the North Vietnam and also in the South Vietnam. So North Vietnam, they wanted to overthrow the Ho Chi Minh regime, so Ho Chi Minh government, so that is the communist government. Yeah. In South Vietnam, so they bombed, so because some of the liberal movement, so liberation movement, they wanted to establish a communist government. Yeah. So in order to overthrow them, in order to defend them, so the American forces bombed in Vietnam. Yeah, but it ended in failure. Yeah, so finally North Vietnam and South Vietnam united in the year 1976. So we have discussed about that. Then we discussed about Ho Chi Minh. So in his name, a city. So the capital city of South Vietnam, so Saigon, was changed as Ho Chi Minh City. So we have discussed that thing also. Then the Americans, so how they attacked Vietnam. So we also discussed that also. Then we will next discuss about the European Union. So towards European Union. So first the Council of Europe. So the why they formed the Council of Europe means, first thing, to prevent European war by ending the rivalry between France and Germany, and also to create a world power. So in order to counter the newly emerged power Russia, and also already existed power America. So to balance the power of those countries, the European Unions formed a union. The European countries formed the union. Then we discussed about the European Coal and Steel Community, then European Economic Community, then Single European Committee. So the Single European Act, which came into force on July 1, 1987. Then finally about European Union. So the Maastricht Treaty, so signed on February 7, 1992, so created the European Union. So the Maastricht Treaty, signed on February 7, 1992, created the European Union. So we have discussed these things. So these are the situation in Europe. So in Europe, European Union was formed. So almost now there are 28 countries as the member. Then the headquarters of European Union was at Brussels in Belgium. So we discussed these things in our previous class. Okay, so first we discussed about Vietnam War. Then second we discussed how the European Union was established. Okay, first the fall of Berlin Wall. So Berlin Wall, so a wall constructed by the communist government, so Russia. So in order to prevent the moving of the East German people towards West Germany. Okay, so after Second World War II, Germany was divided as East Germany and West Germany. So the division of Germany into West. So in West it was Federal Republic of Germany, and East German Democratic Republic. So led to glaring difference in living standard. So division of Germany, so result in glaring difference. So glaring means, so having a fixed hostility, so having a fixed enemy. So their living standard was different. So the Germany, even though it is the same country, but the life of the people, so when compared with West Germany with East Germany means, West Germany was somewhat better, East Germany were very worst. So West Berlin economy became prosperous because of the support received from the West under the Marshall Plan. So West Berlin economy, so that is West Germany's economy became prosperous, became well, because of the support received from the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan. So the division of West Germany and East Germany led to a great difference, so glaring difference in living standard. West Berlin's economy became prosperous because of the support received from the West under the Marshall Plan. In contrast, the USSR had little interest in developing the economy of East Berlin. So West Berlin economy was growing well, so because of the support of Marshall Plan. But if you take East Germany, USSR, so they have no interest. So just they have little interest in developing the economy of East Berlin. Also in contrast, the people in East Berlin suffered from lack of democracy and freedom. So the people in East Berlin, that is in East Germany, suffered from lack of democracy and freedom. So the people of East Berlin moved to West Berlin in large numbers. So East Berlin, so democracy, there is a lack of democracy and freedom, and at the same time the economy is not good because USSR had little interest in developing the economy. But if we take West Germany, so they are growing well, so they have democracy and freedom. So the people of East Berlin moved toward West Berlin in large numbers. So in West Berlin, on the other hand, there was a fear that the Soviet could use military force to take West Berlin. At the same time in West Berlin, so there was a fear that if the people are coming in large number, that is from East Berlin to West Berlin means, Russia may use military force to take West Berlin. In this context, so East Germany began to construct a wall in 1961, which virtually cut off West Berlin from East Berlin and the surrounding East German areas. So in this, at this situation, East Germany began to construct a wall in 1961, which virtually, So cut off West Berlin from East Berlin and the surrounding East German areas. Okay, so in West Germany economy was growing well, so because of the support from Marshall Plan, and at the same time in East Germany there was not that much growth because Russia had no interest in developing the economy. And also East Germany people, so they are lacking democracy and freedom, so they are moving in large number towards West Germany. At this time West German people thought that Russia may use, that is Soviet Union may use military force to take West Germany. So at this time East Germany began to construct a wall in the year 1961, which virtually cut off West Germany from East Germany, that is West Berlin from East Berlin. So they constructed a wall in Berlin city in the year 1961. So cut off the West Berlin from East Berlin and the surrounding East German areas. So if you see the wall, it was heavily guarded with, so guarded means a watch over in order to protect and control. It was heavily guarded with watchtowers and other lethal impediments. So impediments means so something that delay or stop the progress of something. So and other lethal impediments to stop people from the east. So the Berlin Wall was heavily guarded with watchtowers. So there is watchtower and other lethal impediments. So that is something that stops the progress of something. That is, it stopped the movement of people from east to west. So it was guarded with watchtowers and other lethal impediments, so and other sources which help to stop the people moving towards west from east. In the late 1980s, as USSR hold over Eastern European countries was weakening, a mass of people assembled on 9th November 1989 on both sides of the wall and began to demolish it. So in late 1980s, as USSR hold over, so that is USSR control over East European countries became weak, a mass of people assembled on 9th November 1989 on both sides of the wall and began to demolish it. So demolish it. So the Germany was officially reunited on 3rd October 1990. So the Berlin Wall was more than just a physical barrier. It was a symbolic boundary between communism and capitalism. So Germany, so the Berlin Wall, it was a symbolic boundary between communism and capitalism. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, followed by the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Cold War era came to an end. So in the late 1980s, as USSR control over Eastern European countries becoming weak, a mass of people assembled on 9th November 1989 on both sides of the Berlin Wall and began to demolish it. So Germany was officially reunited on 3rd October 1990. So the Berlin Wall, it was not only just a physical barrier. It was a symbolic boundary between communism and capitalism. So communist, so the country which support the working class people, so the laborers. So capitalism, so the country which the capitalism concept, the country which support the company owners. So they gave importance to the company, that is the persons who are starting a company. So that is capitalism. So the Berlin Wall, it acts as a symbolic boundary between communism and capitalism. So with the fall of the Berlin Wall and also followed by the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Cold War era came to an end. So now also, so communism, it existed only in few countries, so like China, Russia, Vietnam. So sometimes it may be a successful one, so that is communism may be a successful one. But most of the countries, so they are following capitalism and also socialism concept only. But with the fall of the Berlin Wall, so and also the collapse of the Soviet Union, so the Cold War era came to an end. That is, there is a decline. So there is a fall in communism concept. So Helmut Kohl, a Chancellor of West Germany from 1982 to 1990, so he played a crucial role, important role in integrating East Germany into West Germany in 1990. So he thus became the first Chancellor of Unified Germany after 45 years of division. So Germany was divided in the year 1945, that is at the end of Second World War. So after 45 years of division, so Germany again united on Yeah, 3rd October 1990. Yeah. So with the French President Mitterrand, Kohl was the architect. Helmut Kohl was the architect of the Maastricht Treaty, which established the European Union and the euro currency. Yeah, so with the French President Mitterrand and Kohl. So Kohl, he was the Chancellor of Germany. Yeah. So they were the architect of the Maastricht Treaty, which established the European Union and the euro currency. So Helmut Kohl. Yeah, so he was the first Chancellor of unified Germany. Yes. Who was the present Chancellor of Germany? So just to check it. Okay, so thus, so Berlin Wall was constructed, then it was demolished. So it was constructed. So in order to divide Germany, west and east, especially the moving of people from east to west. So people began to move from east to west in large number. So in order to prevent them only, the wall was constructed in the year 1961. Yeah. But when they came to know, the people, when they came to know that Soviet Union's control over East European countries becoming weak, they demolished it, and finally Germany was officially united on 3rd October 1990. So the Berlin Wall, it was a symbolic boundary between communism and capitalism. Yeah. So the person Helmut Kohl, so the Chancellor of West Germany, played an important role in unifying East Germany with West Germany. Okay, disintegration of the Soviet Union. So disintegration means so process of coming into pieces. So process of becoming pieces. Yeah. So Soviet Union so liberated into many countries. So partitioned into many countries. Yeah. In the 1970s and the early 1980s, that is from almost from 1970 to 1980, the Soviet Union so continued to retain a strong and dominant position in international politics. Yeah. So in the early 1970s and also 1980s. So from 1970s to 1980s, the Soviet Union continued to retain, so continued to hold a strong and dominant position in international politics. Yeah. But its economy was suffering and was unable to match the productive capacity of the first world, that is the capitalist countries. Yeah. So between 1970 and 1980, the Soviet Union, so they are very strong in international politics. But if you take their economy, it was suffering a lot. Yeah. So they are unable to match the productive capacity of the first world. Yeah. So in case of politics, they are strong in the year 1970s, in 1980s. But if you take economy, they are suffering. Yeah. So they can't unable to compete with the first world market. Yeah. So first world countries market. Yeah. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev, so the president of USSR, took over as the head of USSR. Yes, in 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took over as the head of the USSR. Yeah. Gorbachev spoke about the need of openness. Yeah. So in Russia, it was called as glasnost, and reform, perestroika. Yeah. So Gorbachev so took head of the USSR in the year 1985. Yeah. So he spoke about the need for glasnost and perestroika. That means openness and reform. Yeah. But his commitment to reform, so apart from opposition within the ruling Communist Party, did not match the resources available to USSR. Yeah. So he wanted to change the economy, because in the 1970s to 1980s, the economy of USSR was suffering a lot. Yeah. So he spoke about the importance of openness and reform of the Russian economy. Yeah. But his commitment to reform, so he wanted to introduce some reforms in the economy. Yeah. So it was opposed by the ruling Communist Party itself, and apart from that, so his reforms, the resources, so which was in USSR, was unable to match the reforms. So the resources in USSR were not that much. So they are not that much available. So for the reforms of Gorbachev. In the middle of the 1980s, about 1/3 of the total GDP was going to the military. So in the middle of the 1980s, about 1/3 of the total GDP. So GDP we have discussed in economics. So that 1/3 of the total GDP was going to military. That is, they are spending a large amount for military. And in also In order to maintain a parity with the US in the context of the President Reagan's Star War program, it became necessary for the Soviet Union to allocate more fund to military. So at the same time, so during that time, so Russia and America, so they had war not only in the earth, in the land, so they also had war in the sky. So that means they wanted to establish who is supreme in astrology, so in astronaut, so they were in compete in sending human beings to space. So in this context, Russia only won, so they only send first human beings to space. But if you take moon, who was the first person to reach moon? Neil Armstrong, so he is an American. So for these competitions, so both countries, America and Russia, spend a large amount of money. But if you take American's economy, it was very good at that time. But if you take Russia, its economy was suffering a lot. And also the increase in military budget further strained the Soviet economy. So in the 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took over as the head of USSR. Gorbachev spoke about the needness for openness, glasnost, and reform, perestroika. But his commitment to reform, apart from opposition within the ruling Communist Party, did not match the resources available to USSR. So his commitment to reform, apart from opposition from his party, did not match. So he want reforms, but the resources available in USSR was not that much. So it was not in huge amount. So in the middle of 1980s, about 1/3 of the total GDP was going to military. So 1/3 of the GDP was going to military alone. And also in order to maintain a parity with the USSR, in the context, in order to maintain a parity with the US, in the context with President Reagan Star War program, it became necessary for the Soviet Union to allocate more fund to the military. And also the increase in military budget further affected the Soviet economy. So perestroika. So perestroika means restructuring. So that is refers to the program introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev in the late 1980s to restructure Soviet economic and political system. So perestroika, that is restructuring, refers to the program introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev in the late 1980s to restructure Soviet economy and political system. Along with the policy of glasnost, perestroika was intended to energize Soviet economy, which was lagging behind the developed countries of the capitalist world. So along with the policy of glasnost, that is openness, perestroika, it was introduced to energize, to give energy to the Soviet economy, which was lagging behind, so which was far apart from the economy of the developed countries of the capitalist world. Then glasnost, openness. It was a policy of ideologically openness introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev along with perestroika in the 1980s. Under glasnost, there was more openness. Writers who had been censored earlier were rehabilitated. They were given independence. So they were rehabilitated. So rehabilitated means, so that is, they were given more freedom to write what they wish. And there was a space for criticism of politics and government. And the writers were allowed to criticize the policies of government. So glasnost was the policy of ideologically openness introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev along with the perestroika in the 1980s. So under glasnost, there was more openness. That is, the writers, so they were given freedom. So the writers who had been censored earlier were rehabilitated. So they were given freedom. So there was space of criticism of politics and government. So they were allowed to criticize the government policies and also even government. But if you take China now, the communist country, so all the press and the media was under the control of the government only. So if you take in India, so media, so they were independent. So they can publish the news as per their wish. But if you take in China, Russia, so there is strict regulations. So before publishing the news, they have to get permission from the government. So they won't publish any news against government. So even though they publish means it is very in law low quantity only. Yeah, so very in few numbers only. Yeah. So not like in India. So China, Russia, if you take these communist countries means they were very strict. Yeah, so they won't allow the media so to turn against or to publish news criticizing the policies of the government. So the year 1988 saw the first mass protest first in Armenia. Yeah, so the year 1988 saw the first mass protest. So first protest in Armenia and then in the Baltic state. So Baltic state means the country which are near the Baltic Sea. So in the map of Europe, so in the northern side you can see North Sea and also the Baltic Sea. So the countries which are located near the Baltic Sea were called as the Baltic states. So they were Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. So these countries were called as Baltic states. So there were protests in this state. So first was in Armenia and then in the Baltic states. Earlier Soviet regime had used severe repression to quell such uprising. So earlier Soviet, that is the government. So before Mikhail Gorbachev, so the rulers of Russia used severe repression. So severe method to quell. So to control such uprising. So but Gorbachev could not take recourse to such brutal measures. So Gorbachev did not take brutal measures to control it. So but before him, so the rulers, so the head of the communist regime in Russia took some severe repressions, took some strict method, strict step to control such uprisings. So the Chernobyl disaster, a major accident in the nuclear plant in Ukraine in 1986, was another blow. So there was already a mass protest in the year 1988. So first in Armenia and in Baltic states. So before that itself, in the year 1986, so there was a major accident in a nuclear plant in Chernobyl. So which is in Ukraine. It was another great blow. So Gorbachev made moves to stabilize his position by reliance on conservative forces in 1989 and 1991. So Gorbachev, in order to make his position strong and stable, so he makes some adjustment with the conservative force in 1989 and 1991. But on each occasion, he was interrupted by massive miners' strike, which came close to cripple the country's energy supply. But whenever he wanted to introduce some reforms, or he wanted to stable his position, to make his position stable, means there was a massive miners' strike, so which came close to cripple the country's energy supply. So because of the mass energy miners' strike, so there was decline. So there was a struggle for the country's energy supply. The East European communist state under the Soviet Union were also in a deep economic and social crisis. So Gorbachev's decision to loosen the Soviet control on the countries of Eastern Europe created an independent democratic momentum. The East European communist countries, which was under the Soviet Union, were also in a deep economic and social crisis. So Gorbachev decided to loosen the Soviet control on the countries of Eastern Europe. So that they created independent and democratic movements. A series of workers' strikes undermined the communist regime, first in Poland, then in Hungary. So a series of workers' strike. So workers undergo a series of strike in Poland and then in Hungary. It undermined the communist powers in these countries. A wave of demonstration that swept across East Germany led to the demolition of the Berlin Wall in 1989. At the same time, we discussed about the demolition of Berlin Wall. So there was a opposition against the communist regime in East Germany, which resulted in the demolition of Berlin Wall in the year 1989. So the East European communist states under the Soviet aggression were also in a deep economic and social crisis. So East communist country, so they were very much affected because of the Soviet Union's policy. So their economy was affected. So there was no freedom. So there was no democracy. At this junction, Gorbachev decided to loosen the Soviet control over these countries. So because of this, so there was an independent and a democratic concept developed in these countries, that is in East European countries. So a series of worker strike which undermined the communist regime, so which shows their power of the workers, but it defeated the communist powers in Poland and then in Hungary. At the same time, a wave of demonstration that swept across East Germany, which resulted in the demolition of Berlin Wall in 1989. So subsequent to it, so at the same time, so during the same period, so regimes, so the government in Czechoslovakia followed by Bulgaria fell. So during that time, so that is during the 1989s, so the government in Czechoslovakia followed by Bulgaria, so there were communist government, so they fell. An attempt by Romania, Nicolae Ceausescu, to resist the wave of change by shooting down demonstrators ended in his execution by a firing squad. So at the same time, so during the time, Romania, a country in East Europe, so the ruler of Romania, so Nicolae Ceausescu, so he wanted to resist, so he wanted to suppress the wave against the communist. He wanted to suppress the wave against the communist. He ordered the shooting. She ordered the shooting, but it ended in execution. It ended in the killing of Nicolae Ceausescu by his own firing squad, under the command of his own generals. So Romania, the ruler Nicolae Ceausescu, so he wanted to suppress the wave of the change against the communism. So by shooting down the demonstrators, he wanted to suppress the wave of change, but it ended in his execution by a firing squad. So it ended in his execution by a firing squad. So execution means the act of punishing somebody cruelly, under the command of his own generals. So the televised image of the shooting, under the fall of the Berlin Wall, galvanized. So galvanized means to make somebody to take action by shocking them or by making them excited. So galvanized means to make somebody take action by shocking them or by making them excited. So the televised images of the shooting and the fall of the Berlin Wall, so galvanized the process of breaking above the communist world. In 6 months, the political map of the half of the Europe had been redrawn. So in the 6th month, the political map of half of Europe had been redrawn. So already in the 1980s, 88, the first worker strike began in Armenia and then in the Baltic state. So at the time it was symbolized that Russia's control over Eastern European countries was getting diminished, so getting lost. So during the time in Czechoslovakia and in Bulgaria, the communist government fall. So during this time, Romania's ruler Nicolae Ceausescu, in order to suppress the wave against the communist regime, ordered for the shooting. Down the demonstrators, but it ended in execution, in his own execution. So execution means to act of punishing somebody cruelly. So he was punished cruelly by his own generals. So the image of the shooting, so and also the fall of the Berlin Wall, so galvanized the process of the breaking up of the communist world. So in 6 months, the political map of half of the Europe had been redrawn. So Gorbachev made a last attempt to take hard line against the disruptionist, only to be challenged by a second great miners' strike in 1991 and a huge demonstration in Moscow. So Gorbachev made a last attempt to take a hard line against the disruptionist. So disruptionist means so to make it difficult for something to continue in the normal way. So to make it difficult for something to continue in the normal way. It was not continued in normal way. That is, the Soviet Union control over the East European countries would not continue in a normal way. So he know well it was not possible. But he decided to take some strong steps, but it was challenged by second great miners' strike in 1991 and a huge demonstration in Moscow. So demonstration means so a large meeting, public meeting, some public meeting or a march, Yeah. So in response, the conservative forces in his government attempted to take a hard line without Gorbachev. So at this time, the conservative forces in his government, in communist government, attempted to take steps without Gorbachev. Yeah. So they used troops in Moscow to stage a coup. So coup means a sudden change of government that is illegal and often violent. Yeah. So in his own government, so Mikhail Gorbachev's own government persons, yeah, so they wanted to capture the government illegally. Yeah. So and they held Gorbachev under house arrest. Yeah. So Gorbachev wanted to take a hard line against the disruptionists, yes, against the demonstrators. Yeah. But it ended in failure. So because it was challenged by the second great miners' strike in 1991 and also a huge demonstration in Moscow. Yeah. So in this time, the conservative forces in this government attempted to take action without Gorbachev. Yeah. They used troops in Moscow to stage a coup, so to introduce a sudden change, so to capture the power, yes, illegally, and they held Gorbachev under house arrest. Yeah. But other military units refused to back them, and as a result, power fell into the hands of Boris Yeltsin, a reformer backed by the West. Yeah. But the military forces, yeah, so the other military forces, yeah, only few supported the conservative forces and they held Gorbachev under house arrest. Yeah. But other military units, they refused to back them, they refused to support them, and as a result, power fell into the hands of Boris Yeltsin, a reformer supported by the Western countries. So who was Boris Yeltsin? So Yeltsin, so he was an ally of Gorbachev. However, as mayor of Moscow, Yeltsin won great popularity as a champion of political and economic freedom. So Yeltsin won great popularity as a champion of political and economic freedom. With the Gorbachev introduction of democratic election for the Soviet parliament, Yeltsin was returned to power with overwhelming the support of a Moscow constituency in 1989. So the following year, he was elected as the president of Russia over Gorbachev objection. Yeah, so the following year, in the 1990s, he was elected as the president of Russia over Gorbachev objection. So President Yeltsin advocated greater autonomy of the Russian Republic with the executive presidential system that would allow him to govern independently of parliament. Yes, so President Yeltsin advocated greater autonomy of Russian Republic. Yes, so greater autonomy means so self-power. Yeah. So with the executive presidential system that would allow him to govern independently of parliament. Yes, so he wanted to govern the country without the interference of parliament. Yeah, so he wanted that type of change. Yeah, so Yeltsin, he was first an ally of Gorbachev. So he was an ally. So he was a friend of Gorbachev. But as a mayor of Moscow, Yeltsin, so he won great popularity as a champion of, that is, as a supporter of political and economic freedom. Yeah. So with the Gorbachev introduction of democratic election for the Soviet parliament, Yeltsin was returned to power with overwhelming support of Moscow constituency in 1989. Yeah, so Gorbachev introduced democratic election for the Soviet parliament. Yeah. Yeltsin now returned with great power. Yeah, so because of the support from Moscow constituency in 1989. Yeah. So the following year, he was elected as the president of Russia over Gorbachev objection. So with the Gorbachev objection, so he became the president. So even though Gorbachev, the president, the previous president, objected, so he became the president. He was elected as the president of Russia. Yeah. President Yeltsin advocated greater autonomy of the Russian Republic with the executive presidential system. Yeah, so the presidential system have the executive power. Yeah, so which allow him to govern independently of parliament. Yeah, so parliament should be free from the presidential role. Yeah, so that is, the parliament should not interfere in the steps, in the activities of the president. Yeah, so that thing only want by Yeltsin, so the president. So in the meantime, so already we know, so Gorbachev was under house arrest. Yeah. So Yeltsin, so he became the president. Yeah. So in the meantime, 3 Baltic states had formally left the Soviet Union. So in the meantime, 3 Baltic states, so they were left the Soviet Union. They were admitted to the UN as independent countries. So they are Estonia, Latvia, then Lithuania. Yeah. In November 1991, 11 republics, Ukraine, Georgia, Belarus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Yeah, so they announced secession. Yeah, so they announced their independence from the Soviet Union. So they declared that they were independent. Yeah, so secession means the fact of an area or group becoming independent from the country or larger group that it belongs to. Yeah, so these countries, so 11 republics: Ukraine, Georgia, Belarus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. So all the countries, most of the countries ended as Istan. Yeah, announced secession from the Soviet Union. Instead, they declared they would establish a Commonwealth of Independent State. So instead, they declared they would establish a Commonwealth of Independent State. On 25th December, Gorbachev announced his resignation. Yeah. For 6 days, the Soviet Union continued to exist only in name, and at midnight on 31st December 1991, it was formally dissolved. So the USSR was no more. USSR was now no more. So there is only Russia. So there is no USSR. Yeah. In the year 1991, so initially some countries declared their independence. Then in the year 1991 November, 11 republics declared their secession. So declared their independence from Soviet Union. Yeah. So they established their own Commonwealth of Independent State. Yeah. So they declared they would establish a Commonwealth of Independent State. Yeah. So on 25th December 1991, Gorbachev announced his resignation for 6 days. So the Soviet Union continued to only in name, and at midnight on 31st December 1991, it was formally dissolved. Yeah, so the USSR was no more. Yeah. So by this time, the Cold War came to an end. So now, Cold War between Russia and America is not serious as like after the World War II, as like in the 1970s. Yeah. So now also there was some criticism some problem between America and Russia, but it was not as severe as like in the 1950s. Okay, students. So today we have completed 4th lesson. Yeah. So within this we have completed world history. Yeah, so from next lesson onwards, we will discuss about Indian history only. Yeah, so till now we discussed about world history. So from lesson 1 to 4, yeah, so the history lessons deal with world history. Yeah, so we have discussed about World War I, World War II, and the events happened after World War I and World War II. Yeah, so this lesson is also very important. Okay, students, take your book. So take page number 49. For textbook reading. So read the disintegration of Soviet Union. Sit. Continue in the page number 50 also. So read it loudly. Then homework. So try to complete your book back exercise. Choose the correct answer. Yeah. So next class I will give you the answer. Yeah. So thank you, students. Have a nice day.